must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
The International Court of Justice is a court that was created to solve problems of disputes of any nature. But this court was created on the basis that times could change and the constitutionalism and the mandate could also change. The International Court of Justice has never changed. In this court, there is no chamber for appeal. There is no chamber for amicus curiae, for people to bring in their opinions in terms of individuals or organizations that are hurt in one way or the other, or good opinions that could shape the outcome of the findings or the cases filed there. This court, therefore, remains one of the most obnoxious, one of the most opaque institutions whose findings we don't know who decides and how the decisions are taken, how stakeholders are supposed to recourse to a remedy, where to get a remedy, we don't know. A court has no chambers, no lower chamber, no upper chamber for appeal. It has itself as a final court of jurisdiction around the world. Are the people of the world going to say, is Somalia and Kenya going into this court, seeing the obstacles that they will cause for the region? Those are the questions I ask. And I want my viewers and those listening to this tape to understand that Africa needs to solve the problem in an African way. There is no other way to solve the problem of Somalia and Kenya amicably than sitting on a table to have a discussion, find ways of resolving the conflict that has brought us to not talking terms. But Somalia seems to be pushed by external darker forces to go and dismember the unity that we have in the Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa. ICJ as a court is an institution that is very opaque, very dark in its sense of darkness, that you don't know how decisions are made. There is no counter checks and balances in the decision making. I therefore urge Somalia and Kenya not to attend this court. I urge Somalia and Kenya to avoid this court for the sake of peace in the Indian Ocean. I also call upon the countries that are supporting Somalia to take this case, to withdraw their support for the sake of security, because we have only one common enemy. The enemy are the terrorists killing the innocent Somalis who need our help to be liberated from these fighters who have come and gathered in the great once country, or the PAL, one of the Pan-African countries in Africa. Thank you very much, viewers. That is my message to the world. Let's spread it. The International Court of Justice is opaque. It doesn't have appeal chamber. It doesn't have preparation chamber. It doesn't have any. Once the decision is made, the decision is final. Do we need that? We call that democratic. I leave it to you. Thank you.
I'm joining the World Health Organization's Safe Hands Challenge Hand washing is one of the most effective ways of preventing the spread of coronavirus. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 40 to 60 seconds.
Fellow Africans, every time we are challenged on matters of importance, there is always a path for redemption. The only thing that Kenya needs at the moment is redemption. It's a redemption strategy that can create a coexistence of all the people, all the tribes, all regions, and all shades of opinions. Challenges come at an hour where a country is on a test. Test runs are always the most crucial points. That's where experiments collapse. Kenya is not an experiment. Kenya is a nation that has existed for 56 years. The challenges, therefore, should not make us hate each other. These challenges should unite us, should unite the people of Kenya to push forward an agenda to follow their president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in delivering the agenda for a better Kenya. A better Kenya will produce a better East Africa. A better East Africa will produce a better Africa. The challenges, the obstacles that come amongst us are many, but we can overcome them through discussion, a wider range of discussion, wider disagreements to agree and disagree, to agree again and disagree to disagree. But we should not form clubs, units, militias, hatred of that nature that can take us to the history. Germany today is Germany because it doesn't want to go to the path of the history. Germany goes to the path of development. Over 70 years ago, Germany was at war with the entire world. Today, it is on the path of resolving some of the problems that come. I want us to stand in the place of Germany and look forward and backwards. See what we can do here, but not yearn for what is in Rome. What is in Rome is safeguarded, but in Sicily, which is Kenya, we need to build a foundation for the younger generation that we are going to live here today. The many who have no employment, the poverty, the ignorance, the diseases that kill the people of Africa. We need to find a modium of operation. Modus operandi. The only modus operandi on this is a united, peaceful Kenya. a Kenya united by values of respect and adherence to the rule of law, a Kenya without schemes of elimination or fiction of elimination or murders written by themselves, a Kenya without any hatred against the president, a Kenya that supports the constitutional roots that the 2010 constitution of yours brought. That is how Africa will rise and shine again. Thank you.
Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting all the way from Nairobi, Republic of Kenya, in the Political Command Center. Dr. Matanga, myself, and in the headquarters of Punchline Africa Television and the Punchline Radio, Punchline Africa, is none other than Miriam Okotu. And then in CBD is our investigative journalist, Daniel Wesonga. Our guest this morning is none other than Winnie Mukami, a consultant in Nairobi in Kenya, a consultant who works on policies, government policies, gives advice to African countries, governments. Thank you very much. Welcome to the show, Winnie Mukami.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Viewers, the show today is Diplomatic Leaks. In Diplomatic Leaks, this show we go behind the scenes to find out what the diplomats think, what they do very wrong during days of night days, and the daytime. Diplomats don't do the same things. They do different things. You talk of peace, but that peace is never got without silent diplomacy. The question before us today, I want Miriam to test by telling us the topic today only. Thank you, Miriam.
All right, so the topic we have today on the Diplomatic Leaks is the Kenya-Somali case. Is a hot potato for UN Security Council, Doctor, and we have the latest in regards to the case between Somalia and Kenya, the ICJ.
Thank you very much. Yesterday, the International Criminal Court, Court of Justice ruled. Now remember, on 24th of February, the year of our Lord, 2020, I wrote a long letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations, handed it over to his PA in Geneva. I told the United Nations that under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, Article 39 and 40, the moment the ICJ takes a position on this case, there will be war. It's automatic. Unless this is the type of diplomacy that Kenya is known for. Kenya should have taken the firm stand never to get involved in something which can spark an international threat to peace. Under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Security Council, which is very clear. Article 39 and 40 says, if there is anything that can trigger, can cause a threat to national, regional, peace, the United Nations Security Council will defer such actions. What Kenya should have done is to go flat out, talk to the diplomats who are the managers of ICJ, talk to the international community, because this is what Somalia has been doing. Somalia has been talking to countries that talk to diplomats, that talk to UN. Remember, this conflict has come up as a result of Norway, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Turkey. All these countries are interested in the oil ridges and blocks that are in the Indian Ocean. On the screen is that letter that I delivered to the PA of Mr. Guterres. I said, any judgment, any talk, anything where you will enter a submission to the United Nations, a body under United Nations, you will be violating the same chapter 7 of the United Nations Security Council and Article 3940 that says something that triggers a war. I'm very happy that behind the scenes and the silent diplomacy, we have reaped, plus the pressure from the government of Kenya itself. Mine, I'm not employed by the government of Kenya. Neither am I instructed by the government of Kenya. But I'm instructed by the policies of my organization. And my organization stands for the truth. I don't want to see any war in Indian Ocean. My organization wrote to the United Nations in before they invaded Libya. That letter is also there. Production team, you can bring that letter out. I told the world that in time, years to come, the Mediterranean Sea will be littered with dead bodies coming from Libya's involvement. And Article 1970 of the United Nations Security Council that sanctioned the bombardment of Libya. Today, Libya is no more. Today, France is laughing. Today, the same country that wanted to dismember Libya are running to say, don't give a chance to the warlords. Don't give things to the warlords. The same countries that are pressurizing Somalia, paying for Somalia's legal fees, tickets, are the same countries that are going to laugh if the two countries fight in the Indian Ocean. The route to the Far East will have chaos. That's why I want to bring it to you, my panel this morning, that there you are. 2021 March is when we reach there again. We shall go 2022-25 until Somalia gets the right leadership. The leadership that respects African constitutive law. The African constitutive law. Farmajo has nothing in his head to tell us that he has read. He doesn't even know what an African constitutive law is. I can recite it here without looking at the books. It talks of no interference of boundaries. African Union has said anything to do with the colonial boundaries of 1884, when Bismarck and others decided to partition us, should not bring any new changes outside the constitutive war guidelines of the African Union. Farmajo and his two prime minister called Hassan Ali have already sold these oil rigs. They have already traded. There is a case in London which has been reopened which I'm pursuing on a highest level, that we must say those who sold the oil riches without, and they got the money, is not benefiting the people of Somalia. No. My panel, there's a lot on the plate. Let's start with the guest. Good morning, Winnie. Welcome.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Ari. Thank you for hosting us. And it was quite elaborate, considering what it is that we are going through. I appreciate the fact that you are quite involved with the processes. And indeed, we have had on many occasions that the silent diplomacy is the one that eventually wins, even when our soldiers are at war. So it is very critical that we play this role, and we play it with a lot of commitment, like you have just stated there. But indeed, it is important to also appraise ourselves once again on the history of the diplomatic wars that we have, with Somalia especially. When you look at the many issues that we have to face, or the many problems that we are facing with our neighbors, you will begin to understand that there's also the issue of the liberation of the mind. Because if we have to constantly be fighting over an issue that is already well encapsulated, as you have said, in the constitutive law of the African Union, then indeed it is more of an issue of, the liberation of the mind. Are we able to really comprehend and negotiate and agree on matters as we have in the past, stated in the law? So I would be keen to see, what direction we'll be taking. But we have also been accused on many occasions. As Africans, we always, resort to physical, physical attacks on each other, so that we can eventually have a sitting to agree on particular issues. So I'll be keen to see how it goes, and that would be my opening remarks as we engage in this conversation.
Thank you very much. You brought out issues of liberation of our minds. We might have got flags, but we have not liberated our mindset. Africa's mindset still remains very, very, very disturbed by factors that are external. If you look at, coming to add on what you have said, the arrest and parading of Kabuga, it gives you an insight of what international theories are. Conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. Everybody was looking at Kenya as the heaven, the safe haven where Mr. Kabuga was. But Mr. Kabuga has been in France. Dr. Matsanga in 2010, I told the people that Kabuga is not in Kenya. Kabuga is in France, in Paris. Nobody wanted to hear me. It's a shame that today, after using Kabuga and knowing that he's 84 years old, that same Mr. Kabuga, with full of cancer, taking him anytime, the French finally delivered him to us after eliminating all evidence that could have incriminated them. That's the way Africa is treated. So Kabuga's issue will be another day. Let's stick to the ICJ, its background. Miriam, give us the background. It is there on black and white.
Yes, and before we just get to the background, there, as Dr. Matsanga has mentioned earlier, the International Court of Justice has pushed oral arguments in the maritime border dispute case between Somalia and Kenya to 15th of March 2021 over the global coronavirus pandemic. Now, the maritime border case, which has been ongoing now for 6 years, was to be heard between 8th and 12th of June 2020, that is next month. And the court's decision was announced on state TV by the Somalia Deputy Prime Minister Mahdi Mohamed Guled, and follows a request by the government of Kenya for the case to be indefinitely delayed because of the disruptions caused by the COVID-19. Now, Kenya argued that the pandemic had impacted its ability to marshal funds and resources for the case, and Somalia had opposed Kenya's request, arguing that the case had already been delayed twice before and that the court could hold proceedings via video conference, which would allow Kenya's lawyers to make the arguments from home. And, Kenya has been trying to avoid a bind. Of course, Kenya has been trying to get an out-of-court settlement with Somalia, trying to take the diplomatic route, but Somalia has not been very keen. And so now we see here, because African Union Doctor also has tried to speak to Somalia and tried to engage Somalia and encourage Somalia to have an out-of-court settlement with Kenya and just talk about it from not engage the courts. But Somalia has insisted to go to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice there. So now, I don't know, due to that background and what this case, we've been talking about it so far. Now, can it be left to, or will this be a hot potato for the UN Security Council? And that forms the basis of our conversation, today. And that is a bit of the background of this case.
First of all, before I bring in Wesonga, I want to expand the background. Sometime last year in October, I came in as an organization independently. As you are aware, ICJ, you cannot file an amicus curiae, which means the friend of the court. You file complaints. Complaints are allowed. It is only the state that can file an amicus curiae. Any state in East Africa would have done that. And let me teach Kenyans some external diplomacy. In the future, you can have a country which is friendly that can file an amicus curiae on your behalf. It doesn't mean it is only East African country. Any country in the world that feels that Kenya will have a problem or this will bring a problem can go to the court and file an amicus curiae. I filed complaints showing how corrupt the judge, the presiding judge, the president of the court, he cut short his retirement. He left before I can reach his body because I was determined to eat him. Either alive, I'm not a cannibal, and I'm not carnivorous, but I wanted to, a cannibal. I wanted to be very, very straightforward to him that he cannot preside over this Kenya-Somalia conflict because of he would compromise himself. He's a Somali. His father is also an elder who is, in the essence, giving advice to President Faramijo. So he could not come in to be the judge sitting on this panel. I'm very happy that we succeeded on that, and he will not be on the panel. And he will never see this case. Let this case not even take place. My position, if I were Kenya, a country called Kenya, this is not a criminal court. This is a case that will spark a war. You go east, you rule east, west, you rule north, you rule south, there will be war. Leave it. That's why some people in the UN, it's not COVID-19, so many conferences, we are going to vote who should be on the United Nations Security Council. They would not stop it. So it is a matter of UN has seen the sense. They are not ready for a war at this moment in Indian Ocean. They cannot accept if they don't go on that route. It is Guterres and his group to be blamed, not Matanga.
Yeah, my perspective on this row between Somalia and Kenya, I would like to put it in a way like Kenya has been of great help to Somalia, and I would like to liken it to an errand son who takes ill advice from the neighbor to try and rock their good relationship with the parents. So when you look at this diplomatic row between Kenya and Somalia, only you realize that this is only a tip of the iceberg, but beneath the surface are positions and interests that are being pushed by players far afield. When you look back in history, the BP, the British oil company, had a concession of exploration of oil in Somalia before the chaos erupted back in 1991. So really, I believe that this issue could be settled outside courts amicably between Kenya and Somalia. But behind the scenes, these external forces that are fueling these disputes and perhaps take the same position that Dr. Matsanga took a while back of really beseeching Somalia to explore other amicable grounds to try and as much as possible to settle this dispute outside the court. That will be my view on that.
And just to add on to that, Dr. Matsanga, you have rightfully given reference to some moves that were made in October last year, and indeed there were discussions like Mr. Wesonga is mentioning there of an approach to the African Union to settle the issue out of court. I think we should also look at this more broadly. We are going to an international court which in their own countries are beginning to think about how they can solve problems without the need for minerals, for example. Today we are talking about, electric vehicles, for example. We are hearing about them not wanting to completely indulge on the issue of crude oil, for example. Africa has just begun to exploit its natural resources. We are now beginning to, to speak the language of the haves, when I talk about the Western and the African. So now we are here and we are not able to solve our own problems because of the richness of our soils. I think we need to look at this matter more broadly. Just yesterday, or is it this week, we had the African leaders having a conversation around where is our space on the European or on the world map when it comes to trade. We are thinking about how can we negotiate now as almost equals, if not equals, moving forward. And now we have a dispute here simply because we don't have, the liberation of the minds to understand that we can agree amongst ourselves and reap the benefits of what we hold beneath our soils. Then that also is the main issue that we should be addressing. Laws notwithstanding, because sometimes we're told that laws are made to be broken sometimes. I know the ICG is supposed to be bringing arbitration, but I'll be more keen on what you mentioned earlier when you opened this program, the issue of silent diplomacy. Can we come to the realization that as a continent, we are beginning to reap the benefits of what we hold as a continent? Can we negotiate on matters amongst ourselves, then present a united front to the international world? I think the moment we liberate ourselves from the fact that we have a big brother who will constantly come to solve our sibling rivalry, then we will begin to have negotiations that are useful. When I look at the content of why we are fighting with Somalia, it is because maybe somebody wants to cut diagonally and another one wants to cut vertically. And then it is not even so much about whether the minerals are there or not, or whether we can share the minerals to a certain extent. It is more about the how, the process of how we should benefit from our own resources. So I think, Dr. Matsanga, even as we have this conversation as scholars and consultants, and even just as human beings, let us not be constrained by what the legal documents presents to the ICG. Let us look at it more broadly from a moral, social perspective, and the gains and the benefits that these two African countries are bound to get if they were to negotiate as a united front in the Western world.
Thank you very much. You brought a very serious point there. Countries to negotiate and have dialogue as African countries. But is Somalia an African country? I honestly, anybody can chip in now. Is the leadership in Somalia an African leadership or a sponsored leadership of leaders whose hearts are in Norway and the United States of America but the border is on Africa.
Yes, I tend to agree with you, Dr. Matsanga. It has been a long-standing perspective from leaders, and not only Somalia, even Eritrea, that perhaps portray them as who are just in Africa coincidentally by circumstance. But when it comes to the way they run their day-to-day business, there has been always very strong links to the Asia and other Western countries that have been supporting the agenda. So really, according to me, there has not been quite strong ties as far as diplomatic relations are concerned between Somalia and other African states. And I remember back in the day when we were in high school, and I think it is a notion that has been also inculcated into the Somali nationals. There's that feeling that Somalis are not true Africans. They tend to gravitate towards Asia and other regions outside the African continent. So I tend to agree with you. You have a very valid point when you raise such a question in this regard.
All right, and just adding to what Winnie there has stated, she raised some very vital points there, and she mentioned or alluded to, if Africa we could come together and negotiate as a bloc, perhaps we could all win. But we all know that the disunity that we have in these different African countries, and a lot of things that happens, we see things differently in terms of good governance, in terms of democracy, in terms of political alienations, in terms of our former colonialists. These are all things that forms the basis of how we run our affairs in the different African countries. So uniting Africa has been a problem. We've seen, we've been trying to have one market, and I think last year we had a few African countries coming together. Now we are looking forward to a free, market. I don't know how far that has gone, but still might be a mirage until it becomes very practical in this continent. So unity in this continent that former late President Gaddafi was fighting for, and other leaders in this continent are fighting for. That dream, I don't know, it's just still in the pipes. I don't think we'll be able to realize it anytime soon because of the different interests and the history that we come with that has become a baggage and has ensured we're not able to unite together for the better good of this continent. But if we could agree, we could come together and negotiate as a bloc, even in terms of, businesses and all that, the way we see the European Union, they're stronger because they're together and they speak with one voice and they have almost similar goals. So they're able really to work together. But in Africa, I don't think that will be very possible because of those factors there that I've mentioned. But it is not impossible, but it might, it has been quite a challenge. Even here, we were just talking early in the morning, the earlier show, where we've seen, the chaos that we see now in East Africa. Just uniting the few East African countries has been a problem. The East African community, it is existing on papers, but when you just look at it right now and judge from the last 2 years and the manner in which it has been carrying out its activities, there's a lot to be desired. So if we can't unite, and if you can't speak in one voice in this tiny part of Africa, so imagine the rest of Africa. Still, that could be even a bigger challenge. So if we could unite, it could be better for all of us. And also, she said that there's a lot to be gained if Kenya and Somalia could come together and speak in one voice. Wow. I know you're saying yes.
And Dr. Matsanga, just to add on to whatever it is.
Okami, hold the fire.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All of you have come closer to not say what I want to say. Mine is more radical. Mr. Farimajo holds an American passport. He works for an NGO in America, in Texas. That's where he used to work. He works, his heart is in America. Mr. Faramijo was awarded Somalia. Can you tell any Kenyan why we had 3 governments in Somalia? Faramijo's government is the 4th. We had Sharif Ahmed Sharif, then we had the first president, of transitional government after Islamic courts. Now, why is it that we are quarreling with only this one? That is, I pick the questions first. Why is it we are quarreling with only Faramijo? Because Faramijo is not. No, you will answer. Okay, answer. Why is it that today we have had so many of these presidents, but this man is the only one we are quarreling with? Mukami.
Well, I may not be able to give you a definite answer to that kind of question, but that's the background you have given, is that we have a businessman running a country and looking at a country like a limited institution where you're able to auction parts of that nation as and when you will. And that's why it is very critical when I hear that, Kenya is completely flabbergasted by the idea of selling a block to the UK in a part of Africa, and you would need planes and of course the natural transportation to come to Africa and say that you own this particular block of a nation. So indeed, that is an unparalleled affront to any nation. Specifically. And I go back again to the issue that you began with. What is so wrong with our constitutive act as an African Union? Why are we not able to prosecute the laws and the provisions that we have provided in that particular law to ensure that we are able to solve our issue? And if this one individual is a problem, have we followed all the processes before we can arrive to the decision that he now has presented and has now caused the diplomatic spark that we have with the country? So yes, I would like us to isolate the individual from the country.
You look at the moment, Mukami, you would like to isolate the individual from the country, but the country is run by Somali nationalism.
I'm saying isolate the individual's policies and approach to a matter from the country's laws and regulations. Because if we are going to succumb to one individual's decision to do a particular thing that is obviously an affront, then we would not be giving the entire of the rest of Somalia, a fair hearing. And we will not be representing them well, and yet they are part of the African Union. So I guess it would be critical in our negotiations, and I like the direction that you're already beginning to take, to really isolate what is the interest of the one individual against the interest of the entire Somalia.
Oh, okay, I pick your point. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And I wanted to tell you the second danger. The second danger to that is that small man, the Prime Minister. He's a Norwegian, but he looks like a Somali. He has never renounced his Norwegian citizenship. He sold these blocks to Norway long time ago. While in London, they created a company called Soma Oil and Gas Limited. The case has resurrected in London, where they sold hot air. That guy there you see on the screen, that's the next, this the headache. Maybe Farmajo can keep quiet, but this man who pocketed the money, and now as we are speaking, breaking news has just arrived. Turkey has just won the contract to drill the oil. Just now, just been sent from Somalia. Here, the Turkish government has won a contract to drill Somali oil. Remember, Turkey has given Somalia 8 most sophisticated planes, jet fighters that are not even in Kenya. They are faster than the ones of ours that do the Uhuru Park demonstrations when we are going Madaraka and this day. Those are the most, and it is here now. What are those coming to do in the region? Is to protect those oil blocks. So, Mukami, east or west, if we don't stop this engagement with the ICJ court, which could come, no Muzungu knows our problem. No Muzungu knows that Kenya and that Somalia are intermarried.
Well, they know that.
They don't know. They don't want to know. They will just come and hammer a verdict, and that verdict will trigger. And that is where all of us, you and the rest of the people, consultants, should focus your energy of educating Somalis, get them away from the policy of the two men, and we have a decision with a government in Somalia that will help us, not the one that will sink us.
So of course, yes, the Kenya wants the border to run along parallel latitude southeast of Kiunga, with Somalia is pressing for a diagonal line down the Kenyan coast. Now, Kenya noted that it had extended its claim beyond the 200 nautical miles in its submission before the United Nations Commission on the Limits of Continental Shelf conducted in 2009. That is where Kenya noted that unusual, claim of about 200 nautical, miles. In the statement, Kenya accused Somalia of accepting the decree on boundaries and reneging its, position, reverting. Kenya wants now Somalia to pull down a map she had presented at the Economic Forum in London, showing the disputed triangle as Somalis. So, showing of these, maps, will this make any difference to the case now at the International Court of Justice?
Mukami, go at it before I come in. Mukami.
Yeah, maybe Doc, I'll take the opportunity to chip in also. And to me, when I look at Farmajo, he's one of the worst rated presidents that Somalia has had in the recent past. When you look at the approval ratings from the Somali nationals, is that Farmajo is perceived as a puppet of the West, his former employers. And really, I think from where I sit, he doesn't have much on the table to do for the nationals of Somalia, rather than enriching himself and his cronies. And this is something that is more prevalent in countries where we do have crisis. You saw the other time we had this man who had moved all the way from the UK to come back to Somalia to finance piracy, and he was the greatest beneficiary of that, doing the illicit trade in the Indian Ocean. So I think, to me, Farmajo is no exception, and whatever he's doing with Somalia is a business. This enterprise to make money for himself and his cronies. But one thing he has to realize is that Kenya and Somalia has such deeper relations, in that we do have a very vibrant Somalia community, having invested heavily in most parts of the country. So when they do take such treacherous routes, rather than maybe pursuing amicable avenues to come to a concession in this dispute, then they are putting a lot of things in jeopardy, including a number of Somalia students who are studying in our universities here in Kenya. So it's really, President Farmajo really has to realize that they are walking on the edge of the knife when they pursue such extreme ends in reconciling this dispute.
All right, and Doctor, there's a question here, or rather a comment that one of our viewers, Abdi Ibrahim, thank you so much. I see you guys are very passionate there. Thank you for engaging with us. We're reading those comments. And you're saying Kenya can continue to kick the can along the road, but eventually ICJ will determine the outcome of this dispute. So continuing to postpone this case, and I understand, the conditions and the situation right now that we have perhaps necessitated the postponement of this case. to next year because of the situation we have, the crisis that the whole world is going through now, brought by the COVID-19. But continuing, to postpone this case, will we eventually see the end of it, or because when you postpone something, you've not gotten a solution to it. So what could be the final solution to this outside of postponement?
There is no the final solution to me as an African. The two countries should come back and engage. We have similar cases worldwide where we have resolved conflicts of oil, the Cabinda, DRC, Congo, and Angola. They are not fighting. Nigeria and Cameroon are not fighting. They had similar cases. There are ways that either Somalia and Kenya can benefit from this oil without a fight. To me, David, if I'm not gone, if I'm around, God will help me to see if a ruling comes from ICJ that gives any of the countries authority over those Indian Ocean blocks, there will be a war. Record it today, I've said it. I don't think there will be a way. That's why you see Qatar, Turkey, Norway. Can you tell me why Qatar, Turkey, Norway wrote the United Nations Security Council blocking the gazettement of Al-Shabaab as a terrorist group? Can you tell me? Tell me one thing that you, as a Kenyan, who is seated here on a time bomb, who has been bombed several times by the same terrorist that Mr. Farimajo is keeping. Tell me as a Kenyan who has been sitting here, whose plane was shot down by people known to be on Somali territory, whom Ethiopia said they are Ethiopians, but we don't know. Tell me, maybe I will take any notes. Tell me all of that 6 people, 6 Kenyans lost their lives, and the Somali government writes us a smaller page in crooked English telling us that this is it, this is what happened, we're investigating. Is this a country that you can work with? Where is our foreign office? What do we do with these people? Tell me,
I think
this is the neighbor. This is the neighbor. Another one before Mukabi comes in. This is a neighbor whom we are supporting with our troops from Uganda and the KDF in Kismayo and the Mogadishu. We Ugandans have died for this stupid country. We have died. We did not start dying yesterday. I have relatives from my village who have left their beautiful women and the children hanging in the streets of my district because they went to pacify Somalia. Now you tell me that this country, we go to the United Nations General Assembly for voting who should be on the Security Council. Do you know whom they have lined up with? Can anybody in the panel tell me? They have lined up with Djibouti. The vote is taking place this month. And Somalia is casting a vote with Djibouti. Now you tell me that Matanga should sit here in Nairobi and smile with these guys. These guys are not smiling with you. Look at the comments that they write. One of them says we are not African, we are in the Arab League. And we have given them all the sanctuary, the necessary things, the money they have made from this country. Is that patriotism, Mukami?
In fact, that is where I was coming, because for any nation or for every person who loves their nation very well, they should be able to take action against any, process or, action that is going against the country. And diplomacy sometimes can feel like a negotiation within a straitjacket. And in most cases, that could be the case because we have stipulated laws and regulations in which we have to negotiate. But what about the Somali person? I come back again, because other than the prime minister or the president of any country, there are millions of others who are within those same boundaries that can be able to speak up for a nation. We have had a up-down approach diplomacy for the longest time when it comes to disputes, especially where minerals and trade is concerned. But have we ever tried to create a down-up kind of approach where we have professionals and patriotic Kenyans or patriotic Somalians who can be able to push an agenda on behalf of the nation? Just the other day, we saw a movement, was it in Eritrea or in Ethiopia, that was started on social media, and change happened. I am not saying that we should overthrow any government, but I'm just saying that we need to really look at the interests of a nation before we can make any negotiations. On the other end, are we dealing with a case of willing buyer, willing seller? If not, that is not the case. Can we begin to have negotiation with a buyer? Why would the buyer even consider bringing the country to that kind of position?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We can't hear you properly, but
okay, hello. Yes.
Yeah, you're
back. So we are being put at the pressing.
Your network is going to Go ahead.
Yes, so I think we need to have a different kind of approach in this negotiation so that it is not so much about it is us against them, but it is more about the entire nation of Somali. Do we have professionals who are against the move? Can they file a contrary lawsuit against this particular individual who is auctioning them to the highest bidder?
Those are the questions you can ask P.S. Macharia and Attorney General of Kenya called Ogeto.
Yeah.
No. The Solicitor General, Attorney General. I think they can tell you, Mukami, my sister, and the panel.
Yes.
The former Attorney General of this country. This is where the case went wrong, and we must revisit history. President Uhuru Kenyatta told us to revisit, but he has never revisited some things. That's why we are finding ourselves in this chaos, because we never revisited after taking over power. We never revisited some people. They frustrated our programs, the Jubilee program up to date. Time has come to revisit where we went wrong. There is no law in the International Court of Justice that Kenya has broken. Therefore, Kenya can withdraw from this case. Finish, period.
All right, and just to add, yeah.
I'm telling you, under article, there's a section, article 34 or something of the ICJ. We were not consulted. Kenya was not consulted. Some people wanted pocket money. And what is this called, which government always officers carry their bags? Per diem?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's say the truth. And Mukami don't disappear when I'm saying this truth.
I think she just, her signal just have a problem there. And when, yeah.
People wanted the per diem. They loaded themselves and went to the Hague. What was my mortician man going to do? in The Hague to do what? There was no need of him going to The Hague. He should have just refused. Nobody would have gone there. We made a mistake. Kenya made a terrible mistake. And Kenya's policy of hiding things until they blow up, then we come at last hour, must also be condemned. Let's bring this on board. We are here, we are being listened by thousands of people. Kenyans are listening.
Yes, I think...
We are now discussing the weaknesses, where we went wrong. Because we said we shall revisit. We never revisited several things. One of the things we never revisited is this one of ICJ. The Attorney General, former Attorney General, erred in going to the ICJ. There was no need of going there.
Yes.
Because this is not a criminal court that could have put a warrant of arrest. We shall discuss it in AU. We took ourselves to a slaughterhouse. And this slaughterhouse is not going to leave us. Mukami, you always rub shoulders with these people. Tell me.
Yes.
The slaughterhouse will not leave us until they have slaughtered one limb. They will slaughter, not Mataka, I hope they will not slaughter. You know, these are things going to happen to Kenya. And Kenya must be very prepared that they erred, they went into this thing, they either make a decision, tell the Secretary General of the United Nations, President Uhuru Kenyatta takes a stand and say if that judgment is done, there will be a very serious consequences. It might not be today, it will be tomorrow. If you see the building up of troops, Turkey is giving Somalia 1,000 aeroplanes, jet fighters, airplanes, the most sophisticated, to guard that oil. And today, yesterday, Turkey had received the contract. Nyinyi mnaniambia hapa that we talk with like mind. Which like mind there? Kenya must start also.
You know, again, going back to the Constitutive Act of the African Union, you know, which sets a codified framework of how countries within Africa should behave. And I am at that point where we are talking about an African country, we are talking about a continent, and we should really separate the individual from the continent, because if we have codified frameworks of engagement, that is the process in which we should go. I know that Somalia went to the ICJ in August, I think, 2014. So they went and filed that case seeking arbitration or seeking to be heard, you know, on the case between Kenya and Somalia. And indeed, we may be coming a little bit lately, you know, late towards the process of withdrawing such a case or negotiating with Somalia to withdraw the case. But you who has done international law, and I'm glad because we interact often, and I learn quite a bit from you. Aren't there other ways that we can do counter lawsuits? Are there other ways that we can begin to push for a withdrawal of this case? Where is the African Union? I mean, if we are standing at the precipice of a war, why are they silent concerning this matter? Why is it only Kenya?
Mukami, which African Union?
Yes.
Which African?
Why do you ask? How many are there?
This one here. The African Union is already bought. It has been bought by France. You don't know the trouble in the African Union now.
But you see, that is why we have...
The deputy chairperson from Ghana has brought a World War II of 3 in the... He said Nkrumah is the one who formed AU. He's just the tall man called Mohammed Faki. They are competing for the slot. It's a war between the English and the French-speaking countries. Which African Union are you talking about?
So are you saying that as an African people, we are helpless? I mean, as much as we may have individuals that hold these offices, African Union is an institution, and it is not necessarily the individuals. And if we have laws and regulations that govern us, I want to believe there are few people, although they may be second in command or third in command, who can be able to drive an agenda that would be for the benefit of the entire nation. Do we want to go back to war? Some of us have been enjoying freedom from colonialism, even if it is just by the fact that there are no guns on the street for the last 53 years. But if we continue colonizing ourselves in the mind and taking ourselves again, like you have mentioned, to the slaughterhouse to invite for more war, then I would say then as an entire, are we collectively that, irresponsible?
Maybe if I could just chip in, Mukami.
Comes in, I want to commend Mukami. Maybe we recommend to His Excellency the President for you to replace Namwamba. Honestly, you look organized. With those type of talk, maybe with him, isn't it Wesonga?
Yeah, I agree.
Namwamba and you, if Namwamba was removed from this ministry, I hit direct.
Yes.
Namwamba is not doing anything for Kenya. Namwamba is looking for contracts for Ruto. That's it. You have left him in the ministry to collect the contracts, to go to Italy, to buy helicopter, chopper. What the hell is this? Which country is this, Japan?
And
I think that has also been a problem, and not just in Kenya. And I would not want to.
Our diplomats. Instead, they are going to buy helicopters.
And maybe just to add on what Winnie mentioned there earlier, she's asking where African Union is. Well, on this one, African Union last year tried to have side talks, with between Kenya and Somalia. I think during the meeting, there's some meeting happening, and then the chair of the African Union, President of Egypt, Fattah al-Sisi, tried to mediate between Kenya and Somalia, and they tried pushing for an outside of court settlement. But of course, Somalia insisted that it shall continue the ICJ, route. But also, you also mentioned there that Kenya perhaps came a bit in late, and Doctor has been laying the blame on the former, Attorney General of the country, Professor Githu Muigai, because yes, indeed, when Somalia first took Kenya to court, that was in 2004. Kenya was a bit, late into responding, and before that, Somalia had been, I think, seeking talks with Kenya, and Kenya was a bit also, slow to respond. So, but perhaps it's not too late. We can still salvage the situation, but there are some technical errors there that Kenya indeed make, and we have to speak it as it is.
Let's make it very straightforward. As long as you come in,
yes,
come in, replace Namwamba.
That would be quite an interesting one.
Mukami, on this panel, she has moderate ideas for Somalia that you think you can bring them back, because Mr. Namwamba is always dressed in very nice suits, but delivers zero. Very nice. Sure. Honestly, I have been following everything from Italy, from Cameroon, the helicopters. There is something very
I keep
funny.
asking.
Yeah, I know you are going to ask.
We can't find that in the Google map, but we can find Aror and Kimorer. Those are there in the Google maps.
Those things, the dam money. If you look at the dam money, before any investor comes in this country, who is supposed to make an investor? Who is supposed to do what they call due diligence? Who? It's supposed to be Namwamba.
And I think that's why we need to separate.
To visit the man who took our money of 70 billion or 21, he sat in Italy. You saw him in suits in Italy. Walikura, they have eaten. So this is not the ministry. There are people there who cannot solve this problem. President Uhuru Kenyatta is on his own. The earlier the UN channel to stick to the Secretary General. I tell you, Your Excellency, That's the only channel that there will be a war and Security Council can make a decision to defer what they call a deferral. Under Article 39, the 40, deferral, wachana na case. ICJ, with these ones will not come. If we don't do that, we are in trouble. Watu watatumaliza. Another thing, let me cut it short because all of you are not hitting the points again. Hit these guys. You have done very well, but hit them. We better remove Farimajo.
Yeah, I think we should be pushing.
As a Pan-African, me personally, not Kenya, I am going for Farimajo. And I will make sure that internationally I blacklist him with that small man there. I'm going to blacklist Hassan Harrier, that he will never travel anywhere except Mogadishu. Mark my words and leave cut my lips. I'm not joking because there is a crime he committed, several crimes. He sold those blocks and let him hear today because I can see on Twitter he's watching. Watch me. We shall walk inch by inch. If you don't remove that case and bring it back to African Union, we shall also blacklist you, Mr. Hassan Ali. Do not move out of Mogadishu.
Winnie.
Yes.
Well,
Kenya used to be a giant of foreign policy. You are telling me now to go in a suit easy. Apana.
Yes, and maybe, Doc, just to chip in, Mukami talks about the African Union. In my honest perspective, I think the African Union has been lackluster in its operations, and its efforts to solve African problems has not been measuring up. So really, for Kenya to put their hopes towards the African Union, it will prove a wild goose chase, and nothing will really come out of it. I believe our strength as a country, as a sovereign state, really rests with our own resolve to show leadership. Of course, if you look at Kenya and compare it to Somalia, we are 2 years ahead in terms of economic, socio-economic, and also political development. So really going to the negotiation table, we are the people holding the carrots in that essence. So it is upon us to set the rules of the engagement. We cannot be playing into the hands of the Somalia national government by President Famajo. So it's upon the Kenyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the relevant leadership, to take up their mandates quite firmly and with strong resolve of seeing that Kenya gets what is rightfully ours and not playing to these pork barrel theatrics that Somalia is bringing on the table.
And just before Winnie comes in, because Winnie wanted to chip in there and say something, I see one of our viewers here, Abdi Ibrahim, you're saying you're not sure if Kenya can institute regime change in Somalia. Kenya does not want to institute any form of regime change in Somalia. That is from Dr. Yes, so we have to clarify that. That is not Kenya's intention.
I'm not speaking on behalf of the Kenyan government.
Yes.
I'm speaking on behalf of Pan-African Forum, UK Limited.
Yes.
Mr. Adeb Ibrahim, you want to challenge me? Come on, bring it on. And bring it on, yes, on that level. I am not a minister of foreign affairs of Kenya. I am speaking as an international activist. I see the danger that if these countries continue with this case, there will be a war. And that is all. I am not asking whether I want part of the oil or give me to take to my country. No, I just don't want a war in the region. Full stop.
Yeah, so it's a very delicate balance there. But just before Winnie comes there, it's also not very worth noting that according to Kenyan authorities, Somalia already has auctioned this oil prospecting right in the disputed area. So while Kenya, this case is still in court, it has not been, decided upon. Somalia has gone ahead and auctioned. That is according to Kenya. Now, Kenya now wants Somalia to inform the investors that she does not claim the oil blocks and therefore has no jurisdiction to strike a deal on them. While Kenya did not give a deadline, Somalia responded by denying the auction but was tight-lipped on the preferred. Of course, we see the dispute resolution is at the ICJ. The communication came after a high-profile meeting in Mogadishu attended by President, and Prime Minister. That is sometimes back last year. So we see that Somalia has gone ahead, according to some reports, and auctioned these oil blocks that are still under dispute. Mukami.
That is the case. As you come in, that is the case which is in London. The investigations of Soma Oil having used those blocks to launder money, to pick money, which seem to have ended in terrorist organization. That's the case. It's different from Miriam. That is where the London case is. Soma Oil closed the former Minister of Home Affairs, who is the chairman of Soma Oil, violated all the rules of the United Kingdom, closed the case, but the case has been reopened. Investigations are going on as we speak about Soma Oil activities. It's not going to end well for this small man here. Called this one here, that small one, called Hassan Ali, who ate a lot of food in Kenya here, and then now goes to molest Kenya. He can threaten Kenyans, but not us on international scene. The case is going on, believe me or not. And I want to say it here, by March next year, we would have indicted Mr. Hassan Ali. Let him take notes and know what he did in Kenya here. I don't want to tell you, that one seated there, you see that one? That's the one, that small one. That's the one who sold these blocks, brought all these problems. That's why he's running very fast to make sure that they are sold and the matter is concluded. But we are walking inch by inch, soil by soil, until we catch him. We shall catch you, Mr. Hassan Ali. You can protect yourself in Mogadishu, but you not protect yourself in international waters. Because what we have for you is heavy.
Mukami. Do we still have Mukami there? She wanted to say something. Yes.
Mukami has run off.
Okay.
No, I haven't run off. I have actually heard everything that you have said. And I'd like to appreciate the fact that, from where you sit, you have quite a global, grasp of things, and you also operate at that level. But just to go back to the comment that was brought forward by Miriam, is that for sure, we are talking about continental boundaries. We are talking about, continental wealth. We are talking about, national relations. We are not talking about any individual relations, between one person to another. And if this is an issue that has now been presented to the ICJ, it has been presented as an issue concerning an entire nation and could have effects on an entire continent. So if we have individuals or if we have government officials speaking to a matter that is of that kind of magnitude, no one at any point should consider that as a potential conversation around regime change. Not at all. We are looking at the interests of a country. We're looking at the interest of a continent. And the moment you come into a conversation with that mindset, then you won't have problems about whether you're going to be in office or not. You're going to look at things more objectively. You're going to look at things based on the facts that are laid on the table. So no one is talking about regime change. It would be folly anyway for Kenya to even consider that. We are speaking from the basis of there is a document that has been presented at the ICJ. What are the pros and the cons? What is the impact of this document to a continent? What is the impact of this document to?
Foreign affairs. I think you to do better job there.
Thank you for that vote of confidence. I really appreciate it.
No, let's give you accolades because people, the bosses are watching this. Why don't Mukami become CAS?
Thank you for that vote of confidence.
In a new change that is coming, because this type of ideas need people like her.
I appreciate that.
Does not listen to this. Matsanga goes it just umundu. I finish. I go mutu. This Somalis threaten us every day. We Ugandans, if we were given time by AU, we would have finished that conflict. They will all be in Indian Ocean. I tell you, because some of these guys, you give them food, they come and they kill you. They have killed us here. Now we are playing. They are going to come. And then they go on the microphone and say, hey, we finished. You know, it is very bad. And yet the people supporting them will come in. The Prime Minister and the President. They are now in bed with terrorists. It's a very serious matter in the name of God.
Yes, it is indeed a very serious issue, and that's why we should never rely on one channel of intelligence. There should always be a sense of counterintelligence on every document that we make our decisions on, because sometimes one will say, I made a decision based on a document that was laid on top of my table. But it is important for you to always question whether this information that has been placed on the table is indeed the facts. We may find ourselves even at war with our neighboring country because of documents that were presented and were not the authentic documents. So I would be very keen to revisit the documents that were presented to the ICJ and also question why our Attorney General then did not revisit the matter, as you have rightfully mentioned. So I sometimes we make things look really big, but you might find it is perhaps a comma or a full stop that may have brought all this controversy. So I like the patriotism is critical. I think being a patriotic Kenyan would be very critical. Some of these decisions are not that difficult to make. And besides, we also have experts who, like you, in the legal front. We have experts in maritime law. We have experts who have no individual interest on a matter. Because once you present it that way, then you're able to agree on whether, because even to go to a war is a decision. You can agree, fine, let us go to war because of facts that have been laid on the table, and let us meet on the other side of the war. But on this particular case, if there is room for negotiations, I think every individual should just take responsibility.
Parting shots. Let me get it from Wesonga.
Yes, from where I sit, Dr. Matsanga, I feel like Somalia is just being mischievous. They're being aggressors for quite no reason. And they need to realize that much in terms of progress in achieving long-lasting peace that is needed in Somalia depends on Kenya. And we do have a lot of Somalian nationals who are residing in Kenya. As I mentioned earlier, we do have also a very vibrant business community of Somalis who are running their investments back here in Kenya. We have students of Somali origin who are studying in our universities. They have to consider that. They have to take that as the ground to forge a very productive and amicable solution to these disputes, and ensure that in future we're gonna continue having quite a cordial relationship with them, because Kenya has sacrificed a lot, despite the fact that even reports have been coming out of Somalia that the national government of Somalia and NISA have been working in collaboration with Al-Shabaab to launch attacks on the Kenyan soil and its citizens. So it's quite good that Somalia shows goodwill and let its efforts to contribute towards coming to a solution measure up. Let them not just show it in words, but also in actions. And to the Kenyan leadership, those ones who are responsible in looking for a solution to this stalemate, they should just show some firm leadership and really bring facts as they are on the table and tell of Somalia, because these disputes, as Dr. Matsanga said earlier, it shouldn't be something to be having a conflict about, because Kenya has done nothing wrong, and that is the approach that they should take. Remember, we are holding the carrots on the negotiation table, and we should not go below the bar when it comes to that. That is my parting shot.
Yes, Mukami.
I would like to say that Kenya and Somalia are not neighbors by mistake. They are not neighbors by accident. We are neighbors by divine intervention. I would say that the minerals and the value that we have beneath our soils is not there by accident. Neither was it transported here. It is there by divine intervention and by the fact that it was God ordained. And I want to believe that our Somali neighbors, as much as yes, they may be Muslims, they believe in a supreme God. We are in this neighborhood together because it was divinely strategized that we be so. It is not by accident that we do have a value that is so lucrative, that is desired by many, but it is upon us and our intellectual engagement and our ability to make, decisive and decisions that would be good for the nation and not for any individual. That is where we may not need any divine intervention. We will need human intellectual ability to decide on what is good for the nation and not what is good for an individual. Any nation would probably, or any leader holding a position of authority, must have read the book of the Art of War. This is a time for tactical variation. We must explore tactical options that would be good for Somalia and for Kenya. We must develop strong defenses. What are our strong defenses? The fact that God has already, or we are already divinely endowed, that is already good enough. We need now to develop strong defenses for what we have. Avoid key leadership flaws. The flaws that we have discussed about today are flaws that are too basic. I think even a kindergarten teacher would not make those kind of mistakes with her pupils and students in class. We should never allow ourselves to be held ransom by ideas and ideologies that are not relevant to our nation and to our continent. So I would beseech and perhaps call for divine intervention, that as our leaders sleep tonight, let them consider what is strategic for Somalia, what is strategic for Kenya as nations, not as individuals and presidents who hold office. That is what I can say, Dr. Matsanga.
Miriam.
Thank you so much there. Winnie has laid out some points there very clearly, and I agree with that, because at the end of the day, Somalia is not going anywhere. Kenya is not going anywhere. We are stuck together, and we share a border, and we are neighbors. And so, at the end of the day, an amicable solution, a solution that both countries will emerge as winners, and nobody will feel as if they've lost, and a solution where that will foster a peaceful future for the both countries. I think that is what we should strive for. So even as the case still there's pending at the ICJ, I still have some hope that perhaps we can get a resolution that will not add fuel to an already very delicate situation as it is. We've seen after this spate, a lot of things happened. We saw a diplomatic row earlier in the year and sometimes back last year. So we don't want things like that to happen, because at the end of the day, should the acrimony continue and the bad relations, then groups like Al-Shabaab and others.
Secretary General, and to notify the court that they want to take part and give advice. Therefore, for you, all of us, including you, before March next year, we can, especially Mukami, we can sit down, Kenyans can sit down and petition and tell the Secretary General and tell the court, we have this advice. And that is the advice. The court is guaranteed. It's not closed. The problem that has been here, and which I want to tell you, which made everybody get scared, was nobody told us about this. People did not tell us. The ministry took itself upon itself to do their things. Otherwise, by now, so many Kenyans would have delivered a lot of petitions in this court. And therefore, I agree with all of you that it's a divine, we are here by divine himself who arranged that we shall have a neighbor who will be bombing us every night. Mukami,
Yes.
we did not know, because if we chose, if all of you were asked where you would be born, you would not be born near Somalia, if we knew.
No, actually, Somalis are good people. I've met very good Somalis around, and when I go to Isli, I go to Somali-owned shops because I know the prices there are fair. They're actually very good Somalis. So it's not, we cannot ostracize a whole nation.
No, I am not, Miriam,
Yes.
I am not saying I hate them, but I'm telling you facts, that if God had asked us, that you want to be near here,
But it's a good thing he did ask then.
Of course, there have been troublesome neighbors, and no one will really want such kind of a neighbor.
A few characters, yes.
Yeah.
You live in your apartment in Nairobi. Your neighbor is hammering music from morning up to evening. Now you have a choice to say, my friend, I can't take this apartment. But I am telling you, but if God had asked me where to be born, I would have told him, don't bring me near here. Because these are people you feel, they turn on you. They will, in fact, when you wait, when this nationalism starts, these two men, the other presidents were very good presidents, isn't it? Didn't we enjoy very good relationship with, because he has a house in South C. His children are here in South B.
Indeed, that is what I would want to mention. It's not about Somalia.
Two mercenaries. We are not against any Somali person. No, but we are against two mercenaries. One Norwegian and the other one American. They are not African. The Norwegian man has not even renounced his passport. The Norwegian man used to eat our food in Nairobi. He was the director of Norwegian Relief Organization. Me, I don't talk when I have not got a record on you, Bam. I know what he did here. So by March next year, you might not go near London. You, Mr. Harry, if you don't remove that case, you will not step in London. Sindio nakwambia leo, that him here, it is not Kenya, it is this man, this one here who conquered Ocampo, is looking for you. Kenya might not look for you. I am going to look for you until I block you from any travel anywhere. Because you are the one who brought us this problem of selling these blocks. We didn't have any problem of these blocks. This oil is there. Kenya can take half. We also take half. Somalia taking. We go to the bank while all of us are smiling. If you want, but you have sold it already to the Norwegians, brother, prepare for the action. You know now, London is not a member of the EU. prepare yourself. What defeat starts up, we cut you down. Have you heard of that African saying? Tutakushikia wewe chini. Uko na maneno mingi ulifanya hapa Kenya. With your people, we know you. And Kenya needs to have people to tell them. You know, Kenya is, people are laughing with these guys. They write one statement of English, very bad English. Then they send it to us. I call upon my MPs in parliament. Yes, there. Mr. Farimajo, I have 97 MPs in your parliament whom I filled forms for. In London, they know me. Watch it one election. It's not Kenya. I don't work for Kenya government. Well, utapigana na mimi until I have wrestled Ocampo. Who are you? I will wrestle you until you become a pariah. Thank you very much, viewers. This is a diplomatic show. Very exciting as usual. We don't take prisoners.
Doctor, very interesting diplomatic leaks. I guess
yes.
people expect us to be more diplomatic, but Doctor, Doctor goes full throttle.
every negotiation starts from whatever extreme. So yes. It is not undiplomatic to have an extreme view, because at the end of the day, we must find a middle ground, and we hope that will be the direction which Kenya and Somalia will take.
I agree with that final statement. The topic coming next is very interesting. And it is like you, it looks like you. You want to stay on?
Maybe I'll have to take a break on this one. I have another appointment at around 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock?
Yes.
This is the economy after COVID-19.
That's an awesome topic. I would have loved to be in it, but I really have to go for this meeting at 1 p.m.
Thank you very much, Madam, for sparing your time. But I hope they have watched. They better take you to that ministry. CAS.
Thank you for the vote of confidence.
Where are the suits looking for business? Kenya is suffering. Hey. Well, thank you very much for us. Miriam and I, we are still good to go. We shall take a break of 10 minutes. With Songa, don't go away. Miriam, don't go away. There's another one joining us from Kiligoris down in Narok. I don't know whether he has found bearing. We don't know.
Bearing is an interesting word. Yeah, I hope so.
Have a good afternoon. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Madam. God bless you. We like your contribution and your humbleness on the diplomatic leaks. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. That was heated. And
great show.
Tell them that. Just switch it off.
We're still on, so our viewers, we shall be back with Africa Business shortly.
Can they bring the subject which is coming up next?
Yes, they're doing that, and so we shall see you. So,
and Miriam, that's yours to take. I'll just answer what is difficult.
All right, so we'll see you after the break.
Oh, you want...
must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.